What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Bituation Room on a Fantastic Friday. You know, just a little extra slice before we say goodbye for the weekend. And you miss me so terribly. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for pressing play if you're listening in the future as a podcast. Remember to do all the things, click all the buttons, just palm your keyboards, like the stream, share the stream, subscribe, God damn it, if you're not subscribed. Give the podcast 5 stars wherever you're listening to this, because we are about to enjoy an interview with, I don't know, a personal hero of mine. Mehdi Hasan is going to be here for the next 40-ish minutes. I've eked out 45 minutes of this man's Friday afternoon. He's joining very, very shortly. So thank you so much for being here. And remember, this is actually 1/3 of the Bituation Room. You got your Tuesday show, right? That's the basic, the regular show. We got the comedians on. Next week, we're having James Adomian on. We're also having Molly White to talk about crypto and obviously the new incoming crypto presidency here. But also Wednesdays are our bonus show. And if you're like, what do you mean? Where is that? It's for patrons only, patrones, members of YouTube as well. We talked about the DNC chair. Who's it going to be? What do we know about Ben Wickler? What do we know about Rahm Emanuel? How are those two people completely different from one another? We also talked about, the news was breaking of the CEO of United Healthcare who was assassinated in not broad daylight. I just want to push back on the daylight thing. It was like dark. It was the morning. But reactions to that. So if you're missing that take, make sure to become a patron, patreon.com/bituationroom, or become a member on YouTube or Twitch, and you can get the same visually and audibly. You get a very cute little icon also if you're listening. It's like rainbow. You feel special. I feel special. And you support this show. And God damn it, thank you for doing so. And now, for the Fantastic Friday, he's an award-winning journalist. You've seen him everywhere. You saw him on Al Jazeera, on The Intercept. You saw him on MSNBC for a few years there. We were on the inside, but then of course, too much truth to too much power. And he founded his own company called Zeteo that everyone should be supporting. It's just awesome journalists and thinkers and interviews. And Mehdi himself, oops, I gave it away, is really pivotal to so much of that content. Please welcome Mehdi Hasan.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello. Hello. Thank you for that very generous introduction.
Yeah, thank you for your time. Thanks for being here.
It's Friday afternoon.
I know.
Get ready.
You're just closing up shop.
I wish. We work 24/7 at Zeteo.
Oh, gosh. Not on the weekends. Well, okay, look, I'm not gonna let's just get to it. I didn't put this in the email, but I am, because I was, I want to prep you on what I want to talk about. But my question to you first off is, should we be scared of a second Trump administration as journalists, as pundits, as people who regularly talk about the threats of Trump 2.0? And now with Kash Patel and the FBI, I guess I'm just like, we're in a weird, tenuous, lame duck moment where there's questions of how afraid should we be? And we is very broad, and it depends on who you are, obviously. If you're an undocumented worker, very different. But I guess I'm just asking you, what are you doing to prepare? And do you think that we in the media should, how do we protect ourselves?
So it's a great question. We are doing a lot to prepare. I can't tell you what, because that would give it away, but we are preparing for sure. And I think when you say afraid and fear, look, we all use that phrase. I've used the phrase on television. I've said, be afraid, be very afraid, But at the end of the day, fear doesn't really help us. Literally, in a literal sense, I'm not asking for people to be just in a ball of fear in the corner. That A, that's what they want. B, that doesn't help you in any way. C, it's not healthy. What I am saying, though, is be aware. Right? Be cognizant of what's coming our way. What bothers me is people in our industry, Francesca, who don't take seriously what is coming down the track. So when we talk about be afraid, be aware, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to rouse people from their complacent slumber. The United States of America is full of complacent people, right? That is why we have gun violence. That is why we had one of the worst responses to the pandemic. That is why we're now about to have a second Trump presidency from people who have memory hold the first. And people like me are kind of screaming, saying, stop just acting like this is normal. Stop pretending that there's nothing to worry about. And you're right. It's not us who are going to be in the firing line first. It is undocumented immigrants. I've frozen in a very strange place, but I think you can still hear me. That is very, very flattering shot.
You'll come back. We know you look much better than this.
This is the best. This is the best I can do. And I think, look, undocumented people are we know January 20th, that's who they're going to go for first. And I think a lot of Latinos are going to get a wake-up call who voted for Trump, who thought, well, he's not coming after my grandmother. I think they're going to discover the harsh reality of 2025 under Donald Trump 2.0. So, look, that is what I want us to do. And our industry, my industry, the news media, way too complacent about Trump. It's going to be fine. Kash Patel is about to be confirmed as the FBI director. He probably has the votes. And, there was a report the other day that he wants to try and find a way to dial back the comments he made to Bannon. The comments he made to Steve Bannon a year ago is when he said, we're going to come after you, the media, criminally or civilly, like an open threat. This is not me making this stuff up. This is what he said. And it's not just he said it on Bannon, he said it multiple times. These people have been very open about their fascistic plans. That's what bothers me. It's not some secret conspiracy that some of us on the left are shouting about. You won't believe what they're going to do. We've got this leaked document. No, they've said it publicly again and again. Bannon, Kash Patel, freaks like Mike Davis, Trump himself, have been very open about the authoritarian plan that they have for the United States of America come January 20th, 2025.
And I also think it's a misread because we're also being sold the idea that Trump in the first term was no big deal.
Yes.
Like there is a rewriting of history.
I'm getting an ulcer just as you say it.
You're what? Getting an ulcer just as I'm saying it. Exactly. And it's like, I mean, let's put COVID aside. Child separation, the fact that we're undoing abortion rights, which is now leading to the death of people seeking abortion, seeking just maternal care as miscarrying mothers or would-be mothers, right? So the idea that no one was injured is just patently false. And if you're talking about were Mika Brzezinski and Joe Scarborough personally injured, like maybe not. Okay, maybe they were okay. But everyday people, working people were not.
It's just a complete, as you say, rewriting of history, and it's allowed us to have Trump 2.0. If this country wasn't full of amnesiacs with the memory of goldfish, then he wouldn't have had a second term because people have said, "What, are you crazy? Look, I'm happy to get rid of Joe Biden. I don't like Joe Biden. I don't like Kamala Harris. I'll put in Nikki Haley or Ron DeSantis or whoever it is, but I'm not having that guy back." In a reasonable country with reasonable people, not filled with a right-wing cult, not filled with goldfish, then yes, we would be able to do that. But yeah, we memory hold. I had liberals and leftists telling me stuff like, Mehdi, calm down, you're being alarmist. We survived the first term. That was the most annoying line I heard for 6 months. We survived the first term. Actually, we didn't. Several 100,000 Americans died from preventable COVID deaths. They did not survive the first time. Tens of thousands of people died from losing their access to Medicaid in the first term. They did not survive Donald Trump. Tens of thousands of Yemenis were killed abroad in the Middle East. They did not survive anti-war Donald Trump. So please stop telling me that it was fine the first time. It was horrible the first time. It was one of the worst presidencies in American history, domestically probably the worst. And you mentioned child separation. There was the praise for neo-Nazis at Charlottesville, which has also now been rewritten. Now that's apparently a hoax. The Charlottesville hoax. The right have convinced themselves that Trump didn't praise Nazis at Charlottesville. So the rewriting of history, the brazen lying, and the complacency has put us in a position where this twice impeached, convicted criminal found liable for sexual abuse is now back in office come January 20th, something that no one would have believed on January the 7th, 2021. Not Republicans, not Democrats, anyone around. If I had said to Kevin McCarthy on the morning of January 7th, well, you guys are going to nominate him and he's going to win, he'd have laughed in my face. And yet, here we are.
Well, and that's, I mean, before I get to like what he can do briefly, but we've been talking about on my show like the crisis of legitimacy and the crisis within. I mean, the right loves to squawk about the deep state, but if you want to talk about the institutions that should have protected us from a second Trump administration, they absolutely failed. And I think one of those failures was placing the accountability for the crimes that he had committed on the voters, really just leaving it to the election. Yes. Well, we will wait and see. And so we're in this time, and the reason I also say fear is because, neo-Nazi groups have not, Charlottesville maybe was one of their coming out parties, but they didn't go away. They've been emboldened.
Marching just a few days ago.
Yes.
And they
Absolutely.
are emboldened, and they do point to Trump as their hero. You know, it's that famous line that not every Trump voter is a racist, but every racist is a Trump voter. Like the racists and the far right and the white supremacists have made it very clear who their guy is. They've done that time and again. And Trump, we know, has never really disavowed them. We remember Proud Boys, Stand Back and Stand By. And we've seen the campaign he ran. I mean, we have all these postmortems about the election. We talk about the Sands ad, and we talk about inflation, we talk about the debate, we talk about this and that. What did Trump do? What did Harris do? Fundamentally, though, he ran a brazenly racist campaign. A week before the election, he held a far-right hate rally in New York. Right? There's no debate about that. We could argue all you want on Piers Morgan about, oh, it's just a comedian. No, multiple speakers said multiple racist things in front of thousands of people who cheered them on. And that he won. And 10 days later, he won. I mean, what does that say about America?
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, my question to you then is about, there's been this argument that because Trump's picks are so inept, Pete Hegseth is just serially drunk all the time, that, hey, Kash Patel wrote children's stories. Maybe they won't be so bad because they're so stupid. What do you make of that argument?
That is an argument that I have made in desperation, looking for some form of hope. The idea that the only way we survive this is, number one, if they all fight with each other, which they've been known to do. And number two, if they're just too incompetent to put their evil plans into action. You know, you've heard the phrase kakistocracy, government by the worst people, most incompetent people. That was Trump 1, but Trump 2 is Trump 1 on steroids, right? In Trump 1, you did have, you know, right-wing people, but right-wing grown-ups like Mattis and Kelly and Tillerson and Mark Esper. By the way, when people say, oh, Trump was an authoritarian in term 1, so why do you think he'll do it in term 2? In term 1, he told Mark Esper, can you open fire on the people outside in Lafayette Square? Can you shoot them in the legs? And Esper said, no, he can't. Next time around, it'll be Pete Hegseth saying, sure, sir, whatever you want. So yeah, there's no grown-ups. There's no guardrails. These are the worst people. They are fundamentally egomaniacs and narcissists and thin-skinned grifters. They will turn on each other. I suspect Vivek and Elon will turn on each other.
Sure.
I suspect Tulsi and Marco Rubio will turn on each other. We got Syria. They're going to inherit this huge crisis, big moving story, geopolitical earthquake in Syria right now. By the time Trump comes in, Assad could be gone, on the verge of going. We don't know. And we know that Tulsi Gabbard takes a very different view to Marco Rubio. They're going to fight about that. It's going to be interesting to see them try and stab each other in the front and back. And yes, that is probably the only chance we have, because on paper, there's nothing to stop them. They have the House, they have the Senate, they have the White House, they have the Supreme Court, they have a huge amount of state legislatures and state governors. Yeah, that's our only hope.
I think that's a good assessment, that they will fight with one another. I have also seen the argument from people who shall remain nameless, but that the fight within the MAGA movement is one that can be exploited for good. That once, MAGA realizes that these guys aren't actual populists and they aren't anti-war, they're definitely, my prediction is we're going to be going to war with Iran within a couple of years. But whatever. They'll turn on Trump, they'll turn on the movement, and that will be sort of the Democrats / progressives, or the left-wing populist opportunity to gain those folks. Like, what do you make of that argument?
I don't buy that argument. I know it's an argument put forward by a fair few people, including people like Cenk Uygur. He and I have had some friendly discussions about this. The premise is that there is this independent MAGA populist anti-war, anti-establishment base. I don't buy that premise. I think there's people who hold those views, but MAGA as a movement is a personality cult. Let's be clear. That beats everything. So, for example, they are anti-free trade now. They love tariffs, even though 10 years ago, the Republican Party was hardcore free trade, anti-tariffs, right? Trump came in and said, no, we don't like free trade, we like tariffs. And the base shifted with him. The Republican Party was hawkish on Russia. If you remember, Mitt Romney ran as the anti-Russia guy. Barack Obama was like, hey, 1980s call, they want their foreign policy back. Then Trump came in a couple of years after Romney and said, no, we like Vladimir Putin, Russia, etc. We don't like NATO. And the base flipped there as well. So I actually think cause and effect is the other way around. I think it's Trump leading the movement. The only one area where I've seen Trump bow down to the movement is on vaccines, right? That is where he tried to brag about the one good thing he ever did in his life.
Yes.
Operation Warp Speed, getting a vaccine made before he left office. When he tries to take credit for it, he gets booed at rallies. He noticed that he was getting booed at rallies. He doesn't like being booed at rallies. He never gets booed at his own rallies. So he stopped talking about vaccines because he knows his base. But I mean, with the exception of vaccines where people are really unhinged and intense on, I do think that, if he wanted to make the case for attacking Iran, he could do it and get his base with him. Now, whether people like Tucker Carlson or whoever else you think has influence on him from the quote-unquote right-wing anti-war position would stop him, that's a different argument. But all I'm saying is I just don't buy that there's this group of millions of people who can exert independent pressure on Trump and the Republican Party. No. They'll dance to his tune. And by the way, that's not always a bad thing, because for the Democrats, their hope of getting back, if there is a free and fair election in 2028, is that there won't be a Trump on the ballot and that no one else in the Republican Party, not Don Jr., not Tucker Carlson, not J.D. Vance for sure, can command the support of that cult in the way Trump did.
Totally. I mean, this is like, Beyonce releases an album that's country. You think her fans are like, ew, gross, you're doing country music? Hell no. They love Beyonce and we will follow Beyonce. And if Beyonce tries to pass a torch to Kelly Rowland, which we all respect Kelly Rowland, but Kelly Rowland is not Beyonce, we will not go along with that. So, I think this is the cult is really important to remember. My take on that whole, we will, we'll nab them in their own hypocrisy and MAGA will turn on them. I think that's bullshit. It's about broad voters. It's about low information voters who maybe wanted to throw in their lot with Trump because they didn't see anything different coming from the Biden administration and Harris campaign. And that is where we have to be.
But you make a crucial point here, which is low information voters, right? This is what it comes down to. When people talk to, I'm on the left. But I don't think the existential question is left versus right. I don't. I think it is about people living in a reality-based community versus those who are not, people who are following the news versus those who are not. You've seen the polls. People who read newspapers voted Harris 2-1. People who got their news from social media and YouTube voted 2-1 for Trump. And I know we're on YouTube, no disrespect to your audience, but let's be honest, the right dominates social media and YouTube and have done for a while. Yeah. And that is a problem. There's a new study out today about how news deserts, places with no local news, where professional local news operations have shut down. And I've frozen again, apologies. In those news deserts, Trump triumphed big time by 40, 50 points, right? So low information is where it's all at. And I think that is a problem for the Democrats and for the left, even for the Bernie view. Like, if your argument is, wait, hold on, we'll say Medicare for all and we'll say higher minimum wage, and when we're in office, we'll pass this or that. That's all great. But if people don't know you did it, how are you going to get the credit? That's the problem. And Joe Biden, for all my criticism of Joe Biden on issues like Gaza and not stepping aside and all sorts of other issues, he did a lot of good things. And what's interesting to me from an analytical point of view is when I look at the election, he didn't get credit for any of it.
Right.
So it's all very well saying, well, the next president should be this or that. But hold on. First, if you're going to have a postmortem about why people didn't think the economy was any good when he clearly did improve the economy. It's not ideal, the American economy. Capitalism is horrible in many ways. But it was way better than what Trump had when he left office. And yet people in this country, the goldfish, the people with short memories, they thought it was better under Trump.
Sure. Well, and I think this is the sort of cynical vote for Trump, because what people want, what I think would meet this moment, is something drastic. In my opinion, it's drastic, call it drastic, but something bold like Medicare for all, free college tuition, a Green New Deal, a jobs guarantee, a housing guarantee. These are the drastic measures, price controls, right? These are the drastic measures.
Harris tried to do a price control and she got attacked and backed away from it. And then they're like, she didn't have a plan for inflation. Well, I mean, look, I would go further, Francesca. I said this recently in another interview, and I'll say it again. I'll make it a thing if I can, wherever I go. Do it. Next person running for Democratic president of the United States should be like, we're going to have a minimum wage of $35 an hour. Who doesn't want $35 an hour? Everyone gets $35 an hour. Yeah. And when people say, how are you going to pay for it? How are you going to get business? I mean, for now,
we'll figure it out.
I've spent 3 elections in a row watching Republicans just lie ceaselessly and get away with it in 2 of them. And I think Democrats now have to reframe that conversation and understand that, when you have a 77-page policy document on childcare with fully costed proposals and your opponent's like, we're going to build a wall and Mexico's going to pay, that is an asymmetry that you're going to have to think about how you deal with. The next Democratic candidate is not just about who they're left or they're right. Are they old? Are they young? Are they male or they're female? Are they confident? Do they have the chutzpah to go out and say outrageous things to get votes? I know people don't want to hear that on the left. Oh, no, we have to have the moral high ground. Bullshit. You got to go out and be confident and take on these lying liars on the terrain that they're on.
100%. I mean, I've said before, I think they need to be scary. Like, I think the ideas need to scare the right.
And also, not just be scary, not just be scary to the right, but not be scared of their own shadows, right? This idea that, oh my God, if I do... Look, half of Harris's problems, if you see all the post-mortem from the advisors on Pod Save and The Atlantic, is like classic Democratic consultant class, like poll everything, focus group everything, don't make a mistake, try and stay. Like, that's bullshit, right? We've seen that some of the most successful insurgent candidacies, Bernie Sanders in 2016, John McCain, both losing, by the way, I know that they lost. But in terms of the energy that they provided before they got shut down by their respective party establishments, John McCain in 2000, I meant to say, we need that energy, right? We need people who are going to say, to hell with the rules and the norms and the ways it's always been done, right? That way cost us 2 out of 3 elections against Trump. Let's be very clear. The Democratic Party fought Trump 3 times. They lost twice, right? That just means your playbook doesn't work. It doesn't matter the Biden one. And everyone knows Trump would have won in 2020 without the pandemic.
Yes,
right?
We do.
We know that the Biden got that across that finish line because people were just that had there not been that last year. One thing I do agree with Trump on, had not been that last year, he would have won. Right? Yeah. So you were losing to Trump 2 out of 3 times, maybe 2 out of 2 straight up, and you need to think again about how you do democracy. Look, I get the anti-incumbency stuff, the inflation. We know all the underlying issues. We know the structural issues. But as a candidate, that's what I'm more concerned about. When people say to me, oh, who's the left's candidate? I'm less concerned about politics ideology. It's about what's your tone, what's your approach, what's your style.
And I think ultimately you can't focus group that. There is no way.
Authenticity by definition.
I mean, well, it's authenticity. And I'm sorry, but Kamala Harris didn't have it. She didn't have it within her. There is no amount of attempting to pretend to have it.
I supported her replacing Biden on the ticket. I stand by that because I think Biden would have been even worse and would have lost much bigger. But having said that, it became clear that she didn't want to do interviews, not because they had some great master plan to deal with the media, it's because she wasn't very good at interviews. And people say, oh, she should have gone on Joe Rogan. No, I'm glad she didn't go on Joe Rogan. It would have been a car crash.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to ask you, because this audience is pretty left, and this audience is also like fed up with the Democratic Party and is not necessarily ready to like jump back in bed with them, which, you know, I know you have thoughts about, but my thought is like, you've done this for media. At a certain point at MSNBC, it was clear there was a limit. There's what you could talk about, what you couldn't talk about, how you could talk about it, how you couldn't talk about it. At what point do you create your Zeteo of the political world as an outsider, as an independent? And I know that, you know, obviously feasibly with winner take all system, with, you know, the system we have, but, you know, thoughts on that, on like, when do we finally realize the Democratic Party is beyond reform and doesn't want to be reformed?
No, look, I hear you. And it does look like cycle after cycle that they don't want to be reformed and aren't interested in reform. And every time they lose, they double down on the losing strategy. They move to the right. They're not willing to hear out new voices, let alone old voices like Bernie's. But I think the problem is with the analogy that when I went independent, I saw that there was a gap in the market. And I saw there was a means to enter the market, and I saw there weren't barriers to entry, and I saw that this could be done. And we set up Zeteo, and we have 300,000 subscribers. We have 500,000 subscribers on YouTube. We have 40,000 paid subscribers, which makes us almost self-sufficient in year 1. We're doing well, touch wood. But we were able to do that because the technology was available, the market was available, the people were available. Unfortunately, that analogy doesn't translate politically. The structural barriers are so high to a third party in this country that you can't just flick your fingers and go, oh, Jill Stein and the Greens, as I heard people tell me all year long. How did that work out? You know, oh, we'll get it to 5%. And then she gets matching funds. She didn't even get to 1%, right? It was insane. So unfortunately, the Greens, like all politicians, lie, and they lied to people and said, we've got a chance, and they didn't have a chance. And third party politics don't work in the country. People get mad at me. Don't shoot the messenger. I'm just telling you, math is math. Right? There was no way the Greens could have anything other than a negative effect on election. I don't think they had a positive or a negative. They had no effect on the election. But, you know, in previous elections, you could argue they've had negative effects, 2016, 2000. Because unfortunately, the system is designed in the way it's designed. So if you have a problem with that, change the system. Right? I don't hear people on the left. I don't hear Bernie Sanders. I don't hear prominent leftists talking about structural reform. In fact, Bernie Sanders was not a leading voice against a filibuster in the Senate. He should have been. I've not heard leftists I have not heard the Democratic Socialists of America campaign against the Electoral College loudly, right? If you want to change politics in America, it can't just be Medicare for all, minimum. I say this to left friends of mine, like, oh, Medicare for all is the way we change the country. All right, you get in, you somehow magically get Medicare for all through Congress, and then Supreme Court shoots it down. Then what do? All roads lead back to the Supreme Court. You have to reform the Supreme Court. You have to balance and broaden and expand the court. You have to get rid of the Electoral College. You have to find a way to get money out of politics. You have to get rid of gerrymandering. All these things, right? They're kind of boring technical fixes. They're not sexy like universal health care or, arguing against a foreign war. But arguably, they're more important than everything, because ultimately that's where power lies, and that's how you're able to exercise power in this country, which is basically designed to allow minorities to rule over us, a white, conservative, rural minority.
It is. And I'm going to say this as just from my perspective. I'm not implicating you in this. But you know what has been sexy this week? The untimely death of a healthcare CEO. And it is wild. And I've been stunned at the reaction from commenters, from people, just seemingly like, Democrats, whomever, right-wingers too, who are like, yeah, private health insurance and the CEOs who run them are evil people, and we should not shed tears, even though they might not support, obviously murdering someone. But what I'm saying is, what does this tell us about what is a narrative that actually is compelling, which is these corporations and these CEOs and the 1% are trying to kill us. They have killed us. They are our enemies. The class war is already being waged. We're just losing it. Yes. I actually think there is a very compelling message, whereas the implementation is not technocratic, but sort of, there's different reforms and whatnot that filibuster. No one's going to campaign on that. Even Medicare for all is very policy heavy, right?
Yes.
Saying that is policy heavy because only older people get Medicare. And so young people are, what the hell is Medicare? Right? So I think, but the 1% narrative is a compelling narrative, in my opinion.
So I agree with that. And also, by the way, we didn't talk about earlier when we talked about, Trump, should you be afraid? What about the climate crisis? Like, I'm afraid for the climate. I'm afraid for our planet.
Yeah.
The damage that's going to be done in the coming years, the rollback of some of the progress that Democrats made under Biden and the world has made on climate change. That's going to kill a lot of people, is killing a lot of people. It's not some future issue. It's killing people now.
Yes.
So that's one issue. But just to come back to your point, I would say two things before I get to the big picture about political strategy and the 1%. Just on the healthcare executive murdered, right? I get it. Nobody wants to shed tears for a guy who ran an evil company that denied claims and basically cost people their lives. What I don't like is the glee, right? I don't like the mockery. Call me old-fashioned. People might not like me for this. I try and be morally consistent, right? I spent the last year attacking Israel for killing people without trial, without conviction, without evidence, and without them being combatants, right? Being men, women, and children. Whatever you think about any evil CEO, this is the United States of America. We're small D Democrats. We believe in the rule of law. If you have an issue, prosecute someone, put them in prison. Last time I checked, the left doesn't support the death penalty, right? So and no matter how evil you think the guy is, no one deserves to be gunned down in the street. That's my view. Call it old-fashioned, unpopular. Also, separately, it's a very American thing, right? This is a very violent society. I don't think we should be glorifying the idea of violence in public. The idea that someone could be shot in semi-broad daylight, to take your point, is a very, very bad thing, right? That's not, again, it's not something the left should support, right? Violence, whether by the state or by private citizens. And I get the arguments. I've heard all the arguments. I'm not unfamiliar with the arguments about structural violence versus interpersonal violence and the responsibility these people have for death. No denying that. Are healthcare companies and their executives responsible for deaths in this country? Undeniably so. But look, I think it's a bit of a straw man. You were like, we shouldn't have to shed tears. I agree. I'm not shedding any tears. I barely even read the story. Like my way of coping is I just don't read it. I need to hear all the backstory. Right?
But I think the story, but Mehdi, like the story for me,
story of why people are unhappy and why would they ever even indulge in this kind of behavior online?
Exactly. That to me is the story that many outlets are missing.
You have to agree with people like dancing on the guy's grave or saying he deserved what he got. Or we should.
Sure.
Call me old-fashioned. I'm not. I try and be morally consistent, so no. But yes, you identify an important point, which is people are angry in this country. People are frustrated. People are full of resentment. And what Donald Trump did so brilliantly, the evil genius of Trumpism, is he gave people an outlet for their anger. He said, look at those people over there. They are to blame for your predicament. Mexicans, Muslims, migrants, trans kids, Democrats, they are to blame. And the Democrats never had a response that matched that. And the Democrat Bernie did, but unfortunately, we know that Kamala Harris started off her campaign trying to go after big pharma and big business. And then her Wall Street donor said, hey, dial it back. Her brother-in-law from Uber said, hey, dial it back. That's the reporting from mainstream publications. So you need to give people, especially in a post-COVID anti-incumbency era where people are uncertain, insecure, precarious, angry, full of rage for understandable reasons about the state of the world, the state of the country. You have to be able to say, hey, here's who to blame. Right? Yeah. The Republicans have the narrative of who to blame. It's the wrong one. It's a bigoted one. It's a evil genius one, though. And Democrats need to be able to say, no, actually, here are the people to blame. Here are the people who screw you over. It is the private equity boss. It is the big pharma boss. It is the health insurance companies. It is the donor class. It is AIPAC. It is the NRA. It is all these people who have polluted our politics and our public square. And the inability to identify, there was a poll done of how people think corporate monopolies are the biggest problem in America. That wasn't reflected in the Democratic Party's campaign. Kamala Harris, instead of campaigning with Lena Khan, the chair of the FTC, who does super popular things, she actually leaked out, or her people leaked out, that we might fire Lena Khan. Mark Cuban, one of the proxies for Kamala Harris, a billionaire, suggested Lena Khan could be gone. AOC, on the other hand, brought Lena Khan to her district, had an event with her. So I think this is the kind of stuff we need to think about. Like, what are we doing to identify, as you say, the 1%, the 0.1%, the people who have really polluted our country at every level, politically, environmentally, financially, culturally. And where are those enemies? The Democrats, like the Labour Party in the UK, doesn't want to point at Rupert Murdoch and say he's actually to blame for the division in this country. Doesn't want to point at Big Pharma and say they are the reason you are suffering, not the immigrants.
No, instead they're like, how can we get our own Joe Rogan? And you're like, oh yeah, let's get our guy who's like, regularly platforms a bunch of right-wingers and misogynists and doesn't
billionaires, by the way, and billionaires,
billionaires, doesn't fact check anything. How can we get a piece of that? It's just
wild. This idea that Rogan is a super populist guy when he gives uncritical interviews to your Peter Thiels and your Elon Musks and like the oligarchy. We're literally now being governed by an oligarchy. You have foreign leaders ringing up Elon Musk to find out what's going to happen next. You just saw this week David Sachs, another one of these multimillionaire bros, being given the crypto czar title. Peter Thiel basically controls J.D. Vance's puppet, basically his creation. By the way, all of them from South Africa, interestingly. And all super rich. This is what oligarchy, or what's being called brolleigarchy, looks like.
The brolleigarchy.
You want to get people worked up, point this out, right? Trump was supposed to be your guy, the guy of the left behind, the working class. He fills his government with billionaires.
Yep. Well, we might disagree on the I mean, I don't agree with the CEO killing, but I do think that when you talk about morality, there is something very immoral about allowing so many, hundreds of thousands of people to go without healthcare. But murdering. Let me finish. Let me just finish. I just want to finish this point, which is we are also living in a time where the American people do not see the justice system working properly. And so you have Donald Trump getting off for all kinds of crimes, including sicking a mob at the Capitol, which if those were a group of Black Lives Matter organizers, there would be dozens of people dead right now. And there would have been a spree, right? We know this. And so we're living in those kinds of times. And I'm not trying to draw parallels to Hamas. I don't think the people here are like, people living in Gaza, but there is a desperation that exists in terms of never seeing actual justice or never seeing, the bad guys get their day. Do you know what I'm saying?
100% agree. But the solution can't be vigilante violence. That is
of course not.
That's the kind of society that is a society that's prone to fascism and nihilism, right? Like that, the left can never, ever indulge that kind of behavior. The left has to, as you say, provide hope, has to provide a solution, has to provide a small d democratic outlet for getting change. Otherwise, in a society where violence is a solution, that's a society where ultimately the fascists win, whether they get elected or not.
Exactly. That's the point. Is it strategically we lose that fight? We lose it because state violence is bigger, and we lose it because right-wing violence is far more prepared. Like they're ready, and I don't want to see bloodshed. So I
agree. And I think, look, again, to come back to, you need to give people a target. I agree about the broken justice system. And look, I'm the guy, Francesca, who used to get attacked all the time. When people die, I'm very critical of them. And in America, there's this weird omerta where if somebody dies, a public figure, you don't say anything bad. And if you say anything bad, oh, no. You have to, Every time someone, I remember when Colin Powell died, I did say, George Bush Sr. died, I went on Seth Meyers and friends of mine, like, please don't say anything critical. Americans won't tolerate it from you, Mehdi, as a British immigrant. No one can't say anything bad about someone. You know, when anyone dies, you know this, right? Cable
Yes,
news,
yes.
like,
Kissinger was a saint, man.
yes,
He really.
even people who know they're talking bullshit just do it out of respect. I've never bought that argument because public figures are public figures. They need to be held to account. You can't do hagiography as journalists. It's not our job. That doesn't mean you dance on their grave. They have family members mourning for them, etc., etc. I get that. But you should be able to speak truth to power, even on the day of a powerful person's death. Yeah. So if you want to say to me, this guy was killed in New York, and in his obit, it's, you know, he ran a company where he's being, was he investigated for insider trading or whatever it was, you know, ran a company that had the highest rates of denials. A lot of people died because of it.
AI to deny.
I'm all for that. I'm all for talking about the bad things this person did. I'm not saying let's just pretend he was a great guy. No. And interesting, his wife has come out and said he had many threats before from people complaining about denials. But my point is the glee about the violence. That is my only objection.
No, I get it. We can move on. I just wanted to name my...
I agree with you 100%. And actually, the glee about the violence is something we should step back and think, where is that coming from, right?
Yes.
That is coming from a place of genuine hate, anger, resentment, understandable, against a class of people who have lorded it over everyone else for so long, screwed people over. And yes, you know, capitalism kills in its own ways. There's no debate about the fact that the system kills people just as individuals kill people.
Okay, let's talk about Gaza and the media. I think we've relived in this last year what we lived during the war on terror, so-called war on terror, right? And the credibility the media lost from actually doing real reporting in the Iraq war politicized my generation, as I was on the streets there protesting the war. Now you've got a whole other generation that is yet another reason, as if they were really watching cable news, but another reason not to watch it, which is cable news is not at all reporting the death I am seeing on a daily basis in Gaza. It led to, obviously, you being offered a demotion, and you were like, deuces, MSNBC, because you actually pushed back on Mark Regev, who was an advisor to Bibi Netanyahu himself. Talk to me, though, about, like, where do we go? Maybe about Gaza more specifically. Like, will Israel's annexation of the West Bank, which might be imminent under Trump, who knows, will the liberal establishment be shaken up by that? And since it's Trump, they'll change their tune. Yeah. Do you think there's a way that they've learned their lesson? Are they learning? You know, they're demonizing college protesters for so long. I don't know. Where are you at with media in Gaza?
I think you will see, rather shamefully and cynically, you will see liberals, prominent Democrats suddenly become a little bit more pro-Palestinian, a little bit more anti-Israeli under Trump, because it's Trump doing it. So, and you saw that in the first term, right? Under the first term, I've never seen the Democrats more kind of anti-Saudi Arabia, anti-Israel, simply because, you know, to quote Rick Wilson, everything Trump touches dies. If he allies with someone, that person becomes a bad guy in the eyes of a lot of hashtag resistance folks. So he actually complicated a lot of bipartisan relationships by being so friendly with Netanyahu and MBS. And I think, you will see more Democrats who didn't have the guts to go against Biden, didn't want to go against the sitting president who was their party leader. They will start questioning a lot more. And fine, good, you know, I'll take it, but the hypocrisy will be clear. And obviously Trump also does stuff in a crude way that makes it easier to oppose him, rather than the ways that, you know, Blinken goes with, you know,
our hearts.
Every
death is a tragedy.
As we give you the weapons to kill. You know, Rubio won't do that. Trump won't do that. They'll say, yeah, kill them all, which makes it easier to oppose, I guess. But look, the annexation is going to happen. There's no doubt in my mind. The violence in the West Bank is going to go. When people said to me on the left, oh, well, they're both the same, Harris and Trump, you can't get worse than what's happening in Gaza, my answer was, actually, you can, because you could get Gaza in the West Bank, which is clearly what Netanyahu and Smotrich want. Smotrich says it every day. They never stop saying it. So we will see how bad it's going to get. You look at the people he's appointed on Gaza. They are the most extreme foreign policy team in American history when it comes to the Middle East. No debate about that. Marco Rubio, Elise Stefanik, Mike Huckabee, who says there's no such thing as a Palestinian, Peter Hegseth, who says you can't love America unless you love Israel. This is a super hardcore, far-right, pro-Likud foreign policy team. So it is going to get bad before it gets any better, if it does get better in Gaza and the West Bank. The question is, what will the liberals and Democrats do? What will the media do? I mean, I don't have any hopes for the media on the Middle East. They've made that very clear across the board, not just in the US. The BBC's coverage, especially its online coverage, especially its headlines, have been absolutely atrocious.
It's like Amanpour and that's it. There's a little,
yeah, you know, Amanpour and my old friends, you know, Ayman Mohyuddin and Joy Reid and Ali Velshi at MSNBC. You know, there's a few people here and there doing great stuff. And it's really sad. And the BBC, for example, this week, Amnesty International came out for the first time and said, we believe it's genocide in Gaza. If you go to the BBC's Gaza website, well, if you did last night, I don't know if it's changed at the time of our conversation, no mention of the Amnesty report. Like, you know, Chomsky always says the greatest form of censorship is omission, right? Not commission, just not mentioning things that don't fit the narrative. And that's how they've basically covered Gaza for the last year. Liberal media has not gone out of its way to be like, yeah, rah, 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 Netanyahu. No, they've taken shots at Netanyahu. They've platformed people who don't like. But what the damage that liberal media has done is by not, as you say, showing the real tragedy on the ground, by not obviously campaigning hard enough to get their own reporters in. That itself is a scandal. But after not getting your own reporters in, not highlighting and amplifying the work of Palestinian journalists on the ground of Gaza who've been dying in record numbers, and instead getting complicit with the Israelis in terms of suggesting these people are terrorists. And you had the Foreign Secretary in the UK, David Lammy, say this week, well, there are no journalists in Gaza. Well, actually, there are, unless you count Palestinians as unpeople, which sadly too many liberals and leftists and conservatives and centrists and people across the spectrum do in the West. So the media failure, I think, will be judged. I never thought the media could do a worse job on any issue than they did on Iraq. Iraq was a radicalizing issue for me, politically. And yet we got it. I think if you put a gun to my head and said which one was worse, I would say the media's coverage of Gaza has been even worse than the media's coverage of WMDs in the run-up to the Iraq invasion.
damn, that's a tall bar. That's a really... Yeah, I mean, and again, I think we've talked about how it wasn't just Gaza that cost the Democrats their loss, but I do think that the so-called liberal media and liberal institutions like, you know, colleges and universities sort of working in lockstep with police and these more repressive forces to not just physically clamp down, but sort of intellectually call them anti-Semites, you know, has been a psychic break for a lot of young people from institutions they maybe otherwise had more respect for.
I mean, here's how, in my view, Gaza, I agree with everything you just said. Here's how Gaza really cost Harris. It's not the policy. It's not whether she came out for an arms embargo. It's not whether she was anti-Netanyahu. It's what Gaza represented as one issue among many that she would not break with Biden on. And we know that cost her. I'm not making this up. Her own team have come out. Plouffe, Cutter, Fulks have come out, done the Pod Save interview, done Atlantic. You know what they said in every interview? It was way worse than you think. We had internal polling showing how unpopular Biden was. When we inherited this campaign, Biden was so unpopular. Oh, that's weird. If he was so unpopular, why did you stick to him like glue for the entire campaign? Why would you not disown him? Why would you not break with him? And then they say stuff like no vice president can go against the president. Not true. Al Gore distanced himself from Bill Clinton in 2000, won the popular vote, but lost the election. Hubert Humphrey in 1968 came out in September and said, I do not support the bombing of Vietnam. LBJ was furious. Hubert Humphrey's polls went up. He only lost to Nixon by half a percentage point today. Till this day, people wonder, well, if he'd come out earlier, he may have prevented Nixon and Watergate. So when you talk about Gaza, it's not just about the policies or about Arab Americans in Dearborn, Michigan. It's about what Gaza meant politically, the message, right? Had she come out and done even a little bit different on the Middle East, swing voters, I do believe, especially in the swing states, and the polling supports this, even people who don't care about the Middle East, and let's be honest, a lot of Americans don't give a shit about the Middle East. It's not that they would have said, oh, wow, she's come out against Benjamin Netanyahu and Smotrich, who I've never heard of. It would have been more like, oh, wow, she's not Biden.
Well, and more than that, even more than that, she's not the establishment.
Not the establishment.
What was the most establishment thing was to be in lockstep with Israel.
Yeah, and have some guts and independence.
Yeah.
And look, Trump saw the polling. Trump's campaign saw the polling in swing states, which showed that people whose votes were up for grabs were more likely to be affected by an anti-war message. And what did Trump do? He went to Michigan and gave a fake anti-war message. You have to go, but I have to play this clip because I subject myself to Piers Morgan panels just for the lulz, really, just to have something fun to do. It is when they ask me to come on with like 6 ghouls, it's pointless, rando right-wing influencers. You actually get like a one-on-one with Piers and just dog walk the shit out of him. But this happened at the end of October. We all remember this. I'm going to play a little bit of Ryan Girdusky or Girdusky, whatever the hell his name is, basically like calling for your death in no uncertain terms.
If you don't want to be called Nazis, stop doing it.
You're called an anti-Semite more than anyone else's table. Yeah. People will sit there and, no, by me, I never called you an anti-Semite. I mean, I'm not sitting here saying I don't.
I'm a supporter of the Palestinians, so I'm used to it. It's
Yeah,
fine.
well, I hope your beeper doesn't go off. The thing is
Did
that
you just say I should die?
You
should not.
No,
Did you just say I should be killed?
No, I not.
Okay, I just love the beat you take there, Mehdi, where you're like, it dawns on you, you look aside, and you just calmly, did you just say I should die? Which can be contrasted with his little cow eyes when he looks over at Abby Phillip, like, no, like, I want to be invited back. Anyway, here's me on Piers Morgan the other day because I was like, who's on the panel? And they were, well, oh, Ryan Jerdusky. I was like, oh, I'm so there, dude. He's pardoned a lot of people. And so those people arguably
Piers,
have
did
had
Donald
more impact
Trump
on my
ever
life
pardon his own
than Hunter
kids?
Biden and his laptop and $1.4 million in tax evasion. Piers, you know you do that like on a Tuesday. Come on. Wait, hang on. Guys, oh, my beeper's going off. Jerdusky's a bitch. Oh. Jerdusky, I think this is for you.
Is
I'll
this
call
like a
him back.
comic?
Yeah. This is a comic who was like, I was like, I need to find something that looks like a beeper. What is this? It's a lens holder. It holds all these lenses. And I was like, perfect. Because I would have used anything.
I appreciate your solidarity against the worst of the worst people who often turn up on Piers panels and CNN panels. So I did chuckle when I saw that. Yes,
I did it for you, man. Someone had to call him a bitch to his face. Last question. You wrote a whole book on how to win every argument. You are no coward in the face of a good debate. You have debated, Israeli officials. You've debated genocidal MFers, in my opinion. You've held your own. You speak a mile a minute. You listen like no one else. You listen to everything someone says and you use it against them. You remember the points. You're so switched on, even on a Friday at 5:00 in the afternoon. And my question though is to you, like, as we enter into this time of unreality, like especially on these shows, like these right-wing shows that are so stacked against us, like when does it not make sense to put ourselves in these debates? When is it just kind of this losing task?
Yes.
And how do you make that judgment?
It's a great question. It's a really important question. It's one I struggle with when I was writing the book because people are like, oh, you don't want to debate everyone. No, the book is not saying that you need to go out and have argument with everyone or accept a debate with everyone, not at all. In fact, I try and avoid bad faith debates, which is why I walked out of that CNN panel at the ad break, because I'm not going to sit and pretend that this guy is some normal dude. What he's saying is outrageous, it's violent. So I left. I didn't stick around for an hour, even though I could have carried on debating him and beating him up rhetorically. So look, I am someone who says only do good faith debates, don't do bad faith debates. And even if you're in a bad faith debate, what are you getting out of it, right? So I had Hassan Minhaj on the podcast recently, We're Not Kidding, which you were wonderfully on recently, and he was making fun of me for going on Piers Morgan, and I was like, look, it's where the audience is, right? So certainly sometimes, and this is the argument some Democrats make to go on Fox, which I don't agree with. I don't think you should legitimize Fox. But Piers Morgan is slightly different. I think it is a place where occasionally you can get your voice out. I did an interview with Piers Morgan after the Lebanon invasion, where I gave him some history lessons on Hezbollah, and I went to Malaysia after that to interview Anwar Ibrahim. Everyone in Kuala Lumpur was like, "We saw you on Piers Morgan. It was amazing." I'm like, wow, this guy genuinely has a platform where you can reach people all over the world. So yeah, I'll use it occasionally. Will I go on with 6 ghouls? I don't have your boldness, probably not. But if I'm up for a one-on-one debate with an Israeli colonel or whoever it is, or a one-on-one with peers, I'll take that, because I do want to be able to get my message across and reach people in places like YouTube with big audiences. But look, in general, especially at a time like this, self-care is important as well to people watching at home. It's not worth it getting into your row with your neighbor or your crazy uncle at the Thanksgiving or Christmas table. It's not worth it, right? If you're only going to change anyone's minds, if you're only going to stress yourself out, don't bother. But if there's a place where you can have a good faith discussion, where you can actually bring receipts and actually, change hearts and minds, don't just change here, but change here, then go for it. And use my book if it helps.
Well, that's why I only do it to troll them. I mean, I only get jokes in because the only way they'll let me finish a sentence is if I start with the following. I agree with Piers. I agree with Ben Ferguson. I agree. And then they all shut up because they want to know what I am about to say. And then I switch it on them and it's a joke. And it's the only fucking way. Otherwise they gish gallop me to death. And it has something to do with me being, I don't know, maybe a woman. Could be that. But Mehdi, thank you so much for being on. Thank you for your time. And everybody, obviously, if you're not subscribed to Zeteo, what are you doing?
Thank you very much. It was a great conversation. Appreciate it.
Yes, I appreciate you. Take care. Have a good weekend. And thank you all for being here as well. I'm going to read some comments and then we'll, F off into the night as we always do. Camperman says, Mehdi's not a Bond villain, so he will not give away his plan. And I appreciate that. I hope he tells me in private, though, what the plan is. He's like, put out the signal. Put out the Zeteo signal. Let's see. Fun pieces. Mehdi's an awesome guest. Agreed. Bolder Than Point says, thank you for your generous super chat. Thanks for having Mehdi on. I love when he's in his street gear. Yeah, but it's still Oxford street gear. So it's like, how street is it? Mehdi, you're a journalistic gangster. We support you and Fran and all the way. When I run for a Senate seat, I'll be counting on both of you to have me on your shows. I will win. Ooh, okay. Balthazar 228, Zeteo is my meditation zone for news. That's amazing. Cassandra Capranica, thank you for your super chat, sending lots of love and appreciation for Mehdi as well. Tracy Ava, sending love, hugs, solidarity, and peace to Francesca and Mehdi, my two favorite leftists. Pondering politics, Francesca and Mehdi, kill it on Piers, more please. Great beeper line from her on Drudesky. I mean, this is the thing is, again, they do not let me speak. Like, I was going to do a whole breakdown of me on Piers, but maybe, I mean, we could do that right now a little bit, but they truly don't let me like finish a line. So it's kind of pointless. So the only hope I can have is just doing a joke. And everyone's like, why are you like a comic? And it's like, well, because I'm actually a comedian. I'm like quite literally a comic. And this is exciting. I want to announce a show. I'll be doing a show. If you're in the Los Angeles area, I'll be at the Ice House in Pasadena on January 22nd. It's a Wednesday, sort of an just an honoring of the shitgeration of Donald Trump. Ida Rodriguez, Matt Lieb, James Fritz, Chloe Hilliard, all guests on this show. One of them is my husband. You guess which one. No, it's going to be so good. So at the Ice House, tickets are going to go on sale very, very soon. So we can take a look at that. But like, no, straight up, there is no point in me going on like, they get so upset by me. And especially this guy, Ben Ferguson, who I love to troll sort of religiously. I'll just show you a few, I'll just show you these shorts because I've shared. They go to my YouTube page, but okay. So here's some choice moments.
He's a drug addict. He didn't know what he was doing.
So obviously, okay, so let me just explain. Piers Morgan, when he asks me to talk about Hunter Biden, which apparently I'm supposed to be very mad about the pardon, and his question to me quite literally has been, Francesca, isn't part of you dying inside knowing that the left has been absolutely discredited because of Joe Biden's selfish part? Like, isn't part of you, don't you feel shame? Don't you want to stand in a corner? Don't you want to just cry and bake your feelings away? Like, don't you just want to curl up in a ball and say, I'm sorry? Like, no. And if I don't answer yes, he gets very mad at me. And so we spent, a fuck ton of time talking about Hunter Biden. And here's my favorite boy. His name is Ben Ferguson. He is Ted Cruz's podcast partner. And so I've called him Best Boy before because look at him. He looks like a best boy. I know Best Boy he is a Republican at age 8 because his papa's a Republican. He has the same haircut he's had since age 8. He looks like he is like a toddler, but like grown up. And he's been wearing a suit since age 8, as he was like holding the camera for his, dad's little like conservative news talk. Like that's Best Boy. That's Best Boy energy. And so here was me. The first question I get asked on this panel.
He's a drug addict. He didn't know what he was doing. That is abuse of a child. It's really sad.
Okay, Francesca, you've been grimacing there, but are you grimacing because in your heart you know that Joe Biden has done a massive disservice to everybody on the left here with an act of utter selfishness?
Oh, I'm grimacing just because I was imagining Ben Ferguson and Ted Cruz putting out a joint holiday card, and I was wondering if they wear matching pajamas when they do that. Do you guys do that, Ben?
I don't understand exactly.
You don't understand exactly what this has to do with, look at you, best boy. So I gotta say, I made this graphic. If you're listening, just go to my Instagram. It's Ted Cruz and best boy in little holiday sweaters. And as I was making it, all I could say to myself was, best boy, look at best boy. There he is. In his little sweater. Oh, so cute. Oh, so cute, best boy. I don't understand that you're fucking dunking on me right now, dog. Okay, so this is early. And you could see Piers and Jardusky are laughing because Jardusky about to get it, but he doesn't know what's coming to him because your girl obviously has plans for him. Also, pardon the... obviously, we just saw me talking about the beeper. I do think... Here is me talking about Pete Hegseth. I was really afraid because when I go on Piers, they're like, oh, we're going to talk politics. I'm like, okay, what the and so it was Wednesday and the Biden news dropped Monday. And so in my heart of hearts, I was like, please don't make me talk about Hunter. Please don't make me talk about Hunter. I don't care. Maybe after 2 days of nonstop talking about Hunter, the Piers Morgan Uncensored show will finally have moved on. Of course they didn't. And then 40 minutes into the discussion, we finally start talking about Pete Hegseth, which was exciting because, of course, I had a little something prepared. And I didn't quite land this because I said the R word. And when you say the R word, they're gonna turn off their brain and they're gonna freak out, which they did. But here was what I had to say about Pete. And I cut it up because homie was squawking at me. I can show you the full in another time. I do think that Pete Hegseth actually is a good choice to oversee the U.S. military. I think they have a lot in common. Like, just like the U.S. military, Pete Hegseth doesn't practice consent, when and pillaging other people, and I think the U.S. military does the same thing. They rape and pillage other countries.
You just made it. You just.
I think Pete Hegseth is really good at operating budgets. He was able to tank the budgets of 2 U.S. veterans organizations successfully.
And I hope they
and as someone who doesn't want to see more wars abroad, if he can tank the Pentagon's budget, I am all for it. I will say Pete is a really good choice because honestly, it's not actually or war if you were drunk the whole time. I'm sorry. That shit is funny. That's like legitimately funny. That's funny. And if you think it's not funny or you're here from Piers Morgan and you're like, you're gonna get sued, yeah, sue me. Have Pete Hegseth defend the fact that he wasn't a serial predator, that he didn't bankrupt 2 veterans organizations that were astroturfed by billionaires anyway. Look at the reporting by Jane Mayer in the New Yorker, an entire expose on Pete Hegseth being a drunk lech time and time again, to the point where he got booted. A drunk lech who's bad with money, go figure, who tried to dance with strippers during a work event, a veterans work event. So is she wrong? I don't think so. In no point was I wrong. In no point am I defaming someone or lying. Now, of course, we don't know what's in the NDA that the woman who was drugged and raped by Pete Hegseth, what was in the NDA that she signed, but we know there was a police report. Usually there's not a police report when nothing happened. You know what I'm saying? Usually you don't make that up. In fact, very difficult to just get a police report. But there was in the city of Monterey in, I believe it was 2019, as recently as 2019, at a Republican women's convention. And he had the audacity to rape. And this is what's great about, this is what's incredible about that story, is this is a woman who traveled with her husband and child to this convention, and her job was to make sure drunk ass Pete got to his hotel room on time so that he could go to sleep and wake up and make his flight the next day, because he has a habit of not doing that. And story has it, according to people who she told, who are not under an NDA, that he was mad because he was trying to hit on 2 women at the bar in the hotel. They didn't bite, and I guess he couldn't drug them in time. And then that's when this woman took him up to his hotel room. She says she doesn't remember what happened next because she blacked out, but her husband was trying to find her all night long. And these motherfuckers think that I'm a disgusting human being? Sure, I'm disgusting. So this is the kind of energy, like, for me, you got to take a piss out of it. Because every time I say something they don't like, I was trying to get out the fact that Roger Stone was pardoned. I was trying to talk about how Paul Manafort was pardoned. That dude was sentenced to time in jail for lying to the FBI. Roger Stone refusing to testify again for Congress, even though we know he was the back channel between the Russian government and WikiLeaks and the Trump campaign in 2016. They want to say that's all BS. They want to say that's all in my head, whatever. No. Republican former FBI director Robert Mueller was the one to find that out. And that dude is a wet noodle because he was like, but you can't prosecute president, you know? So, like, take it up with Mueller. Take it up with your boy. Take it up with people who you probably are whining and dining with right now. This is what I'm trying to say. I couldn't get any of that out because I don't want to play you all the times I was literally just interrupted. So what? So we take a piss. So we go there to mock these fools because it's so silly. I did also, God damn it, I did call Piers Morgan a dingleberry on Trump's asshole. I should probably play that for y'all, shouldn't I? I will find it and I'll put it out, but I did call him a dingleberry in Trump's butt. And I think I called him a dingleberry in Trump's diaper. But here's what I'm saying. Like, people are legit mad. The comments are mad at me. People are emailing me with their actual emails, and then they give their phone numbers like, I hate you. You're terrible. 555-279. You know what I'm saying? I think I've saved some of these emails. I wanted to save one to read to y'all out loud. Maybe I'll do that next Wednesday. We'll do a full recounting of it. But, you know, it's important. Look, I don't want to do it all the time, but I think it is important to have fun because our side deserves a few lulls in the meantime, considering how bad faith so many right wingers are. They live on their own planet. Thank you so much for the new members, Crotchy. 2A nuts advocate for political violence as part and parcel of their gun rights. Don't know who those 2A people are, but thank you for becoming a member. HL, thank you for becoming a member. Mark Lee Match Fishing, thank you for becoming a member. John F. McDropout, I just liked your comment on Twitch. Scalia had death parties. Dude, he kind of did. I mean, Kissinger had a death party too. Like, people were very excited. And thank you so much, Simply Bryson, for gifting a membership. Instructor gifted 5 memberships. You're the best. Yeah, so it was my first time going back on a Piers Morgan since the election. Because I am actually like, I think we are right to be terrified by scary, like, unhinged people on the right. But I also think that we have to build our own thing. So I would rather be having good conversations with Mehdi. I'd rather be talking to all y'all. I'd rather be starting book clubs. I'd rather be, bringing on, people like Jonathan Smucker, who we had on Wednesday or on Tuesday, to like talk about real strategy than just go up against the ghouls, So anyway, have a wonderful weekend. Become a patron, support the show, patreon.com/bitchuationroom. $5 a month, $10 a month gets you a shout out during the fart song. So many reasons to support. 20% off merch if you want to rock a Frantifa shirt. Now is the time to do it, guys. We are all Frantifa. All right. They're hot. 100% union made. Most of your progressive shows sadly can't say that. Mine can. Spared no expense. And thank you guys so much anyway for supporting this show. And we will see you on Tuesday. Have a good weekend. Later.